I just figured
Oh, it wins. What, Nuka? Oh, they gotta eat. You hungry? No, stop.
Hola,
Hola.
bienvenidos, bonjour. We are
Welcome.
live. Welcome to Mother Supreme's Cabinet of Curiosities. All right, you are now entering room 64 of the Hotel Cortez. Yes, we have Wi-Fi now. And yes,
Hallelujah.
the icebox is down the hall to the left. If you see a kid running around the hall with some blonde hair, don't question it. So tonight's stream is going to be, matter of fact, wait a second, hold that thought, pause, put a something in it. We are sponsored by MaryGirlMoody. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, the Facebook group, the Freaks of AHS, and what have you. Tonight's theme is going to be the true crime behind the story. You know, the crimes that inspired Ryan Murphy and Brad, and
AHS, Crimes Behind the Horror.
There you go.
yes.
And who is everybody?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ellie.
Huh? Mike.
You have a fan on, Michael, or
No,
is
it's not me.
somebody's
No.
audio is like I can't really. I didn't catch that, Melinda.
I said he's moving around. His mic is rubbing.
Oh, is that me? My mic?
Yeah, it's like a.
Because I thought it was a wind. It could be. Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
I
you
just
know
turned
what?
off the unit. So.
I think Kitty's cutting out too. What the fuck?
Is that better? I turned off the window unit, so I should be okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I have an air filter on.
Oh, see, that might have been what it was.
All right.
All right.
Melinda has prepared a list, or you found a list, and we're going to go off that list and we're going to discuss the true crimes behind the story. But before we do that, I have to talk about one thing that has been on my mind about American Horror Story.
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
Shall we discuss the annoying and recent and many posts and theories about
don't get don't
not returning to American Horror Story.
Don't get me started. I hope Mary puts
going down that rabbit hole.
Oh.
We need to shut it down right away. Shut it down.
I just want to say to everybody, I put an admin post on it. I don't know if you guys saw.
So
come on,
I'm
guys.
not one for gossip, but do you guys think the reason that he cannot return is because Emma Roberts and him split up and she's with somebody new?
He's returning. There was no truth to that rumor whatsoever. He's returning. He made a comment after Cult about him being burnt out and him needing to take some time. That old comment got twisted around in a new article that was just published recently. That new article that was just published recently, and I don't remember where it was, Kitty. Where's the article?
It's all over the place. It's all over the place.
And as soon as that went all over the place, it went viral. He didn't even say that this year.
It's because of the fact that there's no AHS news right now, so people need news.
Yeah. But it's just absolutely crazy that he didn't even make that statement this
year.
So
the theory's been debunked.
2 years ago.
The theory is debunked.
Ryan Murphy debunked it himself.
Ryan Murphy would come out and say that Evan wasn't returning. If Evan wasn't returning, it wouldn't be other people saying something. Ryan Murphy,
some Buzz magazine. It was ridiculous.
I would believe it. Yeah, I would believe it if it was like People or Time
or Entertainment Weekly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Melinda, you're kind of cutting out a bit.
Well, the one that you need to really pay attention to is like the Hollywood trades, the Hollywood Reporter and stuff like that. Those would be like really where the central news comes from. But
or
at the
TMZ.
End of the day, but at the end of the day, it just goes TMZ too. It just goes to show you that one little rumor in these franchises, these fan franchises, it just spreads like fire. That's why Mary doesn't post or comment on rumors on her live streams and stuff. Every year she makes a big statement about it. She's like, if I don't have proof, even though everybody around me is saying it's proof, I'm not going to report on it. Because
and that's what I've been doing with all my videos too. I'm like, if I can't prove it, I'm not going to put it out there.
And
even if it's something as simple as
like here's an example, like from Freaks, from our site. Even if it was proven to be a rumor, these people still posted on it. I posted this stuff with Ryan Murphy and what he had tweeted and what he said, and I posted an admin comment saying, you guys chill it, with the rumors. Don't take everything, so seriously, blah, blah, blah. Made this big old post. And then the thread kept going for like 3 more fucking pages about, oh my God, Evan Peters good. People don't even read the responses to things. They just believe exactly what they want to believe. And it's like, I don't know. This is how bad things happen to like fan groups and stuff.
Yeah.
Is believing all this crap.
It's not true, people.
It is
Deal
not
with it. Be
true.
happy.
From the lips of the man himself, it is not true.
It's not true. Don't believe gossip.
But it has been good publicity for season 9, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's been great publicity for season 9, and I'm sure Ryan didn't mind.
Right.
Okay, is that it?
You guys ready? Mm-hmm. We're gonna start with number 1.
Uno one.
I wouldn't start
Numero
with
uno.
Numero uno. And like I said, this list does not go in order. Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. I pulled my bangs back. Yeah, but this list doesn't go in order.
Yeah, it's like a little Gwen Stefani type of hairstyle. I like it.
Yeah, little rock style. So we're just going to bounce around, go all over the place and everything. So we'll see what happens. So number 1 is James March. He is based on a real serial killer, H.H. Holmes.
H.H. Holmes.
And he is often regarded as the first serial killer in America. He constructed the hotel, which was called the Murder Hotel, or then known as the Murder Castle as well.
Is it not still standing?
No. It's not standing.
Yeah.
Perfectly crafted to be the ultimate house of horrors, complete with trapdoors, hidden rooms, chutes that lead down to the basement, and purposely disorienting hallways. Mm-hmm. Some of the rooms were even equipped to turn into gas chambers at a moment's notice, with airtight doors that couldn't open from the inside. Holmes murdered as many as 200 people, though he only confessed to killing 28.
28, yeah.
And now it doesn't say it in here. Oh, you know what? The next one is the hotel. But that it's also based not just on the Murder Castle, but no, the Murder Castle actually, I believe, from what I read, it burnt down. They were going to tear it down or repurpose it or something. They were going to destroy it. And I believe there was a fire that actually burnt it down before they could or something like that. I mean, don't quote me on it, but I think from reading, that's what I came across.
Oh, shit.
But I know it's not standing anymore.
My battery's dying. Hello.
Check mine. Oh, I'm at 70, so I'm good.
Wait, who's the Funko Pop of the week?
What was the name of the hotel again?
That was it was called the Murder Hotel or the Murder Castle, but it was let's see, what was the real name?
I got it.
I know it had a real name though. Oh, I got her in her protector. You're not gonna be able to see with the light.
Okay, it was called the World's Fair Hotel.
The World's Fair Hotel, because he built it right before the World's Fair so that it could open during the World's Fair, and that's actually how he got as many victims as he did.
Yep.
Well, not how. I mean, that was part of. So, and then
this week's bobblehead is Misty Day.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a little stand to put her up on so you can see her.
But Melinda,
you know how he got caught? He got caught from selling mortgaged goods. So basically, goods that were on loan that people were still paying for, and he was selling them off. That's how he got caught.
Huh.
Pretty interesting. I'm trying to see if this hotel is any structure of it still there. What happened to it? Okay, let's look at this way. World's Fair Hotel.
We're going to use Cordelia, the pop-up Misty. Sounds about right. Proper up.
Mm-hmm. World's... Can't type today. World's Fair Hotel. Fair Hotel. Okay, here we go. World's Fair Hotel. Okay, many victims were said to have been killed in this hotel. 1893 World's Fair. It's called World's Hotel. Though evidence suggested the hotel portion was never truly open. Many victims evidence suggested it was never truly open for business. Okay, well, what else? Okay, that doesn't tell me anything. So the incredible system. Wait a minute. Wikipedia. This we're staying at the World Social Women's Common. What? Okay, this doesn't make any sense. Why don't they say what's happened to it? Okay, wait. Here we go. Here's the history of it. He said Holmes himself never did this and he never did that, and he's like, it's gone. Well, this is me scanning through it. Holmes especially writes. Oh, wait, where'd he go? Okay, 1867, first floor. Oh, wow, there's this big old model of it. Very cool. I wish I could screen share that. It's a really, really cool model. Wow, they show there on Wikipedia the hotel that they show. They actually showed like a cross section slice of it with all the hidden rooms and everything. It's absolutely fascinating. Can you do a screen share?
I have no idea how to do that.
We need to learn how to do that because that's pretty fascinating. Okay. I'll save that picture. It's really, really cool. I'll send it in the group. Okay. Who's that?
Misty.
Was used for okay, where has it first? Blood covered tables, wow, chutes and ladders and shit. And afternoon place. Well, come on, just tell me what happened to it. For the jurors, Holmes requested. Okay, wait. Before his death in 1896, H.G. Holmes had suggested that he was turning into the devil. Oh wait, okay, that was about the hotel. Oh, this is driving me crazy. Wait.
You're just trying to find the name of the hotel?
No, I'm trying to find out what happened to it.
Oh. Well, just type in what happened to the murder castle. Because people are going to know it as the murder castle or the murder hotel.
Mm-hmm. Happened to the murder hotel in Chicago.
Oh, right. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention that. That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, the World's Fair was in Chicago. It was the Chicago World's Fair.
Murder Castle history. Here we go. From the History Channel. What happened to the Murder Castle? All right, here we go. What happened to it? Despite Holmes' arrest and execution, blah blah blah. Escape. In response to these rumors, meanwhile, the fate of the site of the was when Holmes allegedly safety announced prison. He was after witnesses reportedly saw two men entered the building late one night. The building itself remained standing until in 1938, when it was then torn down. So it wasn't a fire. It was torn down probably by the state of Illinois.
There was something about a fire. I think it was the victims wanted to light it on fire or something like that. And I think they took it down before they could. It was something like that. I know there was something about a fire with the hotel.
Yeah. Oh, wait, here we go. In 1895, the murder castle was gutted by a fire after witnesses reportedly saw two men entering the building late one night. And then it remained standing. So from 1895, it was gutted. So it was just a shell. It was just a burned up shell from 1895 to 1938. When in 1938, the state of Illinois had it torn down. Or the city of Chicago. So there you go. Next.
Okay. The next one says that the hotel was also based on the real life Cecil Hotel. The real life Cecil Hotel, which is now called the Stay on Main Hotel, had a number of insane, creepy happenings. It says,
what hotel doesn't though?
Well, right. And you've got to imagine with so many people coming in and out of a hotel, there's bound to be death. There's bound to be suicides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's murders, there's suicides. There's going to be assaults, things like that are going to leave negative energy and are going to leave, you know.
Of course, it's a place of residence, even temporary residence. Yeah. That's where all haunted things are places of residence.
And it says the hotel actually housed 2 serial killers, the Night Stalker, who killed at least 13 people, and John
wasn't the Night Stalker in the Devil's Night episode?
Yes, Richard Ramirez.
Richard Ramirez was the Night Stalker. So Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, killed 13 people. He killed at least 13 people. It doesn't say that he killed them there, but he did live there. And
I don't think he killed people outside of their rooms, did he?
I'm not sure. Johann Unterweger, who murdered several victims, also lived at the Cecil Hotel.
Wow.
So it was one of those types of hotels where people, it wasn't just like a Hilton or something now. It was more motel-esque where people actually took residency there.
Yeah.
It says the Scary Hollywood Hotel also was the setting of the highly publicized and exceedingly mysterious death of Elisa Lam. Who? Found in the hotel's water tank after guests noticed low water pressure and a funny taste in the hotel's.
Oh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies, that story.
For weeks, people were drinking this water and bathing in this water for weeks before they discovered his body because she'd been missing that long. It says, additionally, the hotel also shares a number of similarities, torture chambers, and hidden passages as H.H. Holmes' infamous murder castle hotel he had custom built to make his murderous hobbies easier, which we discussed. We know about that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Number 3 says Lady Gaga's Countess Elizabeth Bathory was terrifying. So we know that the Countess, we know her name is Elizabeth. Isn't it Johnson?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know.
I think it is. I know it's something like Johnson Williams, but I think it was Johnson.
Let's see here.
But we know she was based off of Elizabeth Bathory. It says her character, Countess Elizabeth Bathory, which that wasn't her name. Her name was Elizabeth Johnson, like we said. But she's based off Elizabeth Bathory, was truly terrifying both on the series and in real life. Elizabeth Bathory currently holds the Guinness World Record for most prolific serial killer and was a true sadomasochist. In the 1600s, she became a Transylvanian countess and convinced her husband to build her a torture chamber in their castle. Her victims of choice were young virginal girls who she'd torture for hours by driving pins through their lips and fingernails and forcing them to cook and eat their own flesh, among other horrors. She'd then bathe in their blood to retain her youthful beauty. Eventually, Bathory was found guilty of over 80 counts of murder and was supposed to be executed. Instead, she was imprisoned in a room alone for the rest of her life.
Wow.
Any thoughts on that?
No.
I mean, that's... Where does Ryan, how did they come up with that fucking, oh, we're gonna do this and tie this into this, and fucking Dandy bathed in fucking blood, too, so...
It seems to be a theme, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, uh-huh.
Well, and then Kathy Bates with the blood. Yeah, it's a theme, and it's usually the blood's usually about power or youthfulness or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Angela Bassett's Marie Laveau was the real life queen of voodoo.
Correct.
From Coven.
Yes. As was Lalaurie.
Angela Bassett's mysterious ancient voodoo queen was based on a real person renowned in New Orleans history. Marie Laveau was a hairdresser in the French Quarter between the 1820s and 1860s, but she also practiced black magic. Now, let me also say that that's all substantial. It hasn't been proven. There isn't records that show. It's more word of mouth for these facts about Marie Laveau. They know she was in New Orleans, but with like her being a hairdresser, and amongst a couple other little things like that, those were never proven, but they're kind of just known as about her. So I just want to put that out there. It says Laveau was said to mix elements of Catholicism and voodoo and was known as a nurse and a healer. Today, people still visit her grave and draw 3 X's on the side of it, hoping the voodoo priestess will grant them wishes. So she's like a fucking genie. I'm sorry. I've never heard that one before. Okay, Kathy Bates, Madame Lalaurie, was an actual real-life socialite turned murderer from Coven. I'm gonna say each character where they're from then. Kathy Bates' twisted character, Madame Lalaurie, terrorized the witches in Coven. In real life, she allegedly was just as violent, so much so that she was investigated for cruelty to slaves in 1828. Since rules were rather lax back then, how bad must it have been for her to get investigated?
Yeah, I saw one of the features somewhere on Coven talks about Lalaurie and how nobody in that society would have even thought to go to their house to go look at something. So something was so horrific.
You remember during the show when she does her Halloween House of Horrors thing, and she actually brings people back there, and it's real organs and real eyeballs and stuff like that. You didn't hear one person, well, maybe one person or so, but say, "Oh, how it looks so real." But people were just like, "Oh my God, I'm terrified," and they ran out.
Do we know that Lalaurie really did that, or is that just American Horror Story?
It says it turns out the stuff she did was pretty darn horrific. Lalaurie attempted to turn a woman into a human caterpillar and would regularly cut out her slaves' intestines and wrap them around their bodies like belts. She also made them eat animal waste. Just a quick sidestep from Madame Lalaurie in Coven, who made soup from human waste. So yeah, I guess a lot of that was pretty. I'm sure some of it was a little bit
glamorized for the show,
exaggerated, but I don't think there was a whole lot to exaggerate on with this woman.
No,
based on what they showed. Do you know what I mean? Okay, Mina Savari's Black Elizabeth Short is best known as the Black Dahlia from Murder House, and then revisited in Apocalypse when we return to Murder House. Mina Savari played the victim of one of the most famous murders in American history, the Black Dahlia murder.
Unsolved.
In real life, Elizabeth Short was a 22-year-old actress who was found brutally murdered in 1947. Her body was chopped in half, but the defining mark of her murderer was a smile carved across her face, also known as a Glasgow smile. The murder was never solved, and it was definitely front page news for quite a while.
One of Hollywood's most famous unsolved mysteries.
Right, that is one of the biggest ones in Hollywood for sure.
They identified the Jack the Ripper murders.
Oh, did they? I didn't hear about that.
Yesterday.
When did they do that?
This Polish guy. They did it based off of DNA evidence off of one of the women's bodies.
How did they still have that DNA?
Like clothing, I guess, or cloth or something. I mean, DNA so microscopic. They have something.
Well, right, but I just find it so funny how we have DNA cases from a case that happened, last week that they say, oh, it's corrupt or corroded, or we can't use it, or it's gone. Whereas we can test something from, the 1800s.
And you know why all that is probably is because there's people alive associated with those things that can contest stuff like that and stop people from looking at things.
Right.
Corruption.
Okay, Briarcliff is modeled after a real-life hellhole. Willowbrook State School.
Geraldo did the whole big old thing on.
Briarcliff seems like far too horrible place to be based in any sort of reality. The story of Staten Island's Willowbrook State Hospital is the stuff of real nightmares. The institution housed thousands of patients over the years, often well over capacity, providing horrific living conditions for the mentally challenged patients. People were sexually abused by the terrifying staff. Awful medical experiments were performed on patients, and patients regularly died from neglect and starvation. There were no evil nuns, but until Geraldo Rivera did a news expose in 1972 that effectively got the institution shut down, there was basically no God who was of any help to the poor victims stuck there.
Terrific. That final scene, that one of the final scenes in Silent, when Lana goes in there and does that expose, that was really close to what Geraldo did.
Yeah, it was, because I remember watching that. Mm-hmm. I'm aging myself.
You're aging yourself again. I watched Geraldo too.
I liked Geraldo. I liked Sally Jesse Raphael too.
Sally Jesse was the bomb.
Jenny Jones.
Jenny Jones.
Ricky Lake. I liked Ricky Lake.
Jenny Jones.
Yeah, Jenny Jones. Until the whole controversy there. That's for another stream. All right. Jeffrey Dahmer had a seat at the serial killer table in hotel.
Yep.
Most people know Jeffrey Dahmer was based on a real life serial killer in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is actually not that far from me. So it's something that is brought up and talked about quite often or mentioned. Anytime someone mentions, you tend to find people who have memories of it happening and things like that. Kind of like you with your story, Mike.
Yeah.
It's like that around here because that was so huge, big, newsworthy, and horrific. And people still remember it.
Dahmer's fascinating. Dahmer's absolutely incredibly fascinating.
Okay, so March holds a grand banquet for serial killers every Hallows Eve, Devil's Night. These killers all existed in real life and hold claim to some of the most heinous acts in American history. One of the vilest was Jeffrey Dahmer, who was played by Seth Gable. In real life, Dahmer was known as the Milwaukee Cannibal and raped, dismembered, and cannibalized at least 17 men and boys in 1978 and 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it says or not through or until.
Yeah, no.
I know
he had two psychotic breaks. He had two psychotic breaks.
He took a break because he was very young when he did what he did first.
Yes.
And he hid it in his parents' house.
Yes. That was his puberty. That because that age is really where you have psychotic breaks, and that was his first psychotic break then. And then the 91, that was when he did all those prostitutes and boys.
So I guess we want to mention too, since we're already there, we might as well. There's no point in doing a separate one. We know Eileen Wuornos was a real serial killer. She was eventually executed. We know that Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was a real serial killer who I believe wasn't he executed or did?
Yes, put to death.
Mm-hmm. He get killed.
Death penalty, I believe.
I know he died, so I couldn't remember.
Oh no, he had, didn't he? Babe, what did Richard Ramirez die of? Didn't he have like pancreatic cancer or something? I think he died of some sort of cancer. All right, I'll look it up. Here we go. Research, Michael.
And then we also know the Zodiac killer was real. We just don't know as we're led to believe later in Cult that it was a leader or a group of women. It was some, but that's also just American Horror Story playing with a story because no one knows.
Correct. No,
there is no definitive answer for the Zodiac killer.
Richard Ramirez.
So he was never caught. He was never
brought
to justice. Damn it. That's why they don't show his face in Hotel when they did it too, was because there's no definitive answer on who the Zodiac killer is.
Right. Where did you get that? Oh, God. Dogs. All right, Richard Ramirez. American serial killer. Oh, God. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he died of some sort of I thought he died of some sort of cancer.
I'm not sure.
I'll find out. I'm going to tell you in just a minute. Hold tight. I need a new nickname for all the research I do. Liver failure.
Captain Data.
Which is deemed natural causes.
Yeah. No, lymphoma. Ramirez died of complications from a B-cell lymphoma while awaiting execution for death row.
Well, here's what Eileen Wuornos' last words were.
I don't know.
She said, I'd like to just say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie, big mothership and all.
Eileen Wuornos was that shit crazy.
Crazy shit. That woman had a lot of problems and issues, though. If you read up on her, there's a lot of really good documentaries on her life story, actually.
There's great movie. There's Monster.
Monster was a great movie. But, I mean, if you want to get more into the backstory, like her younger years and what really turned her into what she was.
Yes.
Because it started from infancy with her.
She was a product of her upbringing and society. That's what her
she was set up to fail the day she was born, basically.
Really sad.
Okay.
Whereas Dahmer was mentally ill. He had a psychotic break. Ramirez was just an antisocial. He was just mean.
Right. Didn't he have women issues too, though?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It was
I don't think he ever had a diagnosed like a schizophrenic or schizoaffective diagnosis. I believe his was all antisocial stuff. Gacy was mentally ill. Fucking, what's his face? Was mentally ill. Charlie.
Oh, Manson.
Mm-hmm. He's batshit crazy too.
The ghost nurses of season 1 in Murder House were inspired by the Richard Speck massacre. Let's see. In Murder House, Rosa Salazar and Celia Finkelstein guest starred as the 2 ghost nurses who were murdered. It doesn't say who they played, though. They played Maria and Gladys. In Murder House.
Mm-hmm.
According to AHS mastermind Ryan Murphy, their murders were inspired by the Richard Speck massacre, a very real, terrifying incident that occurred in 1966. It's one of the only instances depicted in American Horror Story that may have actually been played down rather than disturbingly embellished. In 1966, Richard Speck broke into a nursing dorm in Chicago where he raped, tortured, and killed 8 residents.
Fuck is Chicago.
Chicago is very much known for a lot of violence, a lot of violence. But you have to remember, Chicago is one of the oldest cities, you know, not the oldest or anything, but in that list of the oldest in America.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like my husband just pointed out, it was mafia run. So that meant a lot of crime, problems.
Well, and you also had, you have a lot of
bloodshed.
You have a lot of real poor neighborhoods in Chicago, too.
That's where, because it was such a big city, but it was a melting pot of a city that was segregated into sections, not specifically, but because that's what people chose.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go to, you know, like Chinatown, you could go to Little Italy, things like that, like, you know, the Irish quarters. You could go to all of these different places where that's the main gist of the people who lived there.
Very much.
And
like
then you had immigrants coming in left and right that were slaves. Just like New York.
Yep.
Because it was a major city.
Yep.
So you had the melting pot of people happening there.
Yeah. Sad. Still bad.
There's some really good haunted tours, though, if you ever get a chance to
fun,
go
right?
to Chicago. There's some really, really good ones in that area. And they,
oh my God, I want to go back and do that.
What?
Okay. And then the Vanishing Roanoke Colony is America's oldest unsolved mystery from Roanoke.
The disappearance of the colony.
Didn't they just like debunk it a couple years ago and say that like they had an illness or something?
No, that's from what I hear. That's one of the theories.
It's one of the theories. They still don't have definitive answers. They never will.
Before Roanoke, I watched a big old, like a couple hour-long special on the colony. And the thing that stuck out to me the most, which could be the simplest explanation for all this, was bad documentation on what happened after. That somebody just didn't document what remained of that colony or what people were there. They just like everybody disappeared, and it was just somebody making that through history. The bad documentation just showed it that it was just disappearance. When really, if you were on the scene and you were investigating it, there would be a million more clues. They just didn't document it. That's what I heard.
Okay. It says Roanoke was based on a real-life colony that is one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries. In 1587, a colony of 115 people settled off the coast of North Carolina on Roanoke Island. After an attack by the Spanish Armada, founder John White sailed back to England to gather supplies for the colony. He returned 3 years later, which it doesn't say, but he returned 3 years later instead of immediately because the Queen needed him to stay because there was a war going on, which caused him to be held up for 3 years before he could return to Roanoke.
And also, she was pissed at all the immigration that was going on in America.
Into America, the new Americas.
Yep.
Right. When he returned 3 years later, he found that the entire colony had vanished without a trace. The only thing left behind was the word Croatoan. This word has appeared at numerous sites where people have mysteriously disappeared throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
Potential theories behind their disappearance include cannibalism, infectious disease, and murder by Native American tribes.
Or bad documentation.
Maybe a little bit of all of the above.
What does that word even mean? Is it a made-up word?
What? Croatoan?
The Croatoan.
It's Native American.
It's an ancient Native American word.
But what does that mean, though?
Get the fuck out.
I'll
look it up. I'll research.
Because I know I had read something about it, and I don't want to misquote it because it's a rather important part of history. So I don't want to misquote that.
I will give you all the facts. Croatoan. Supernatural. Okay, wait.
Violet was a stupid bitch for thinking that shit would work.
It means blood-borne virus.
So there you go. Illness. I mean, it was a virus then, illness.
That's what they were trying to communicate. Demonic is considered a demonic virus back then. Possession by the devil.
So it's not that it's a virus. I mean, it could have been, and maybe it made somebody act out.
Yeah, demonic virus lore. Is there anything close?
Very well could have been just somebody who had a mental incapacity, who was maybe acting out or something. And you've heard of like widespread like cabin fever and paranoia, like in groups and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like those things really happen. So I mean, if you're thinking, oh, there's some kind of demonic presence around and somebody's acting weird, it might cause, just like the witch trials were like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it could cause other people to start acting erratically.
Yeah.
And who knows?
Well, absolutely. Those people, they They just settled on that little colony. The little colony was really, really rough for them. Their leader had just left. They were having problems with the Native Americans. They were having problems eating, surviving and stuff. They could have all just gone batshit crazy. Or they could have just, another theory of it is that they just packed up and left.
They could have, and then they could have gotten lost, and they could have died of exposure or something.
Well, the thing about it, how it's so easy, how they could have got ill is because like it was back then, like it was a small colony, like so they all shared a bunch of stuff. That way, like spreading diseases and illness would be like really easy. It's not like they got vaccines.
And that happened a lot back then, so that very well could have happened too. It could have been maybe there was an outbreak in the colony that was left, moved, and that's why they wrote the word.
They could have hated what's his face, that captain. They could have hated him. And when he left to go get supplies, they'd be like, "All right, we out of here. let's move before he goes back."
How typical is that of like an American name right there, John White?
Exactly.
That's like a made up name.
Well, that's where we get all from. All the colonists, all the Whites and the Smiths and the Joneses. That's why there's white privilege in this country. Is because of damn colonists.
When you do that, all right. Roanoke's killer nurses were based on the Lethal Lovers. Bridget and Miranda Jane, the two sister nurses who opened an assisted living facility in Shelby and Matt's season 6 farmhouse, were absolutely twisted. They were also totally real. The two characters were based on Gwen Graham and Kathy Wood, a pair known as the Lethal Lovers. The couple worked at a nursing home in Michigan during the late 1980s and started killing elderly. I'm in the middle of it. They started killing elderly people based on the initials in their names. The goal was to spell out the word murder. Eventually, it turned into an all-out murder spree with no rules or rhyme. And when the pair were finally caught, they turned on each other in hopes to achieve lenient prison sentence. Now, it doesn't say in here, but through research, I found I'm not sure which one. I think it was Kathy Wood, not Gwen Graham. One of them actually admitted it to their ex-husband, admitted something about it to their ex-husband, and he turned them in. And then that's when they started turning on each other like criminals usually do, blame the other one and say it's the other one, or it was all their idea, their fault, whatever, for a lenient sentence.
Yeah.
But they really did do this to spell out the word murder.
It's crazy.
Mondays are murder.
That's just nuts. Because I worked in nursing homes for a long time, and so to think that people that you put in your trust and your care into, and they're the only lifeline you have when they come to the bedside every day, they're the ones that turn around and hurt you and kill you. It's got to be frightening, absolutely terrible. And nobody's in those rooms to even hear, see, or react to what's going on.
All right. Tate Langdon's school shooting was inspired by Columbine in Murder House.
Even the characters were named after initials after Columbine victims, weren't they?
I think it's on here. No, it's not on here. I looked into that because we were talking about that last time. Mm-hmm. They were actually all named after something else. Something that all went together. I forget what it was now. But it had nothing to do with Columbine. Nothing to do with Columbine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't the kids' names, which I'm glad they didn't do it that way, because I think they did on purpose, because I feel like that would have been insensitive to the families. Mm-hmm. But it says, Tate Langdon, the charming but mentally unstable teen ghost played by Evan Peters, has a plot deeply inspired by the shooting at Columbine High School. In 1999, teenagers Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold murdered 12 students and a teacher while injuring 21 more after bringing guns to school. They both committed suicide after the rampage. Tate's shooting occurs in 1994 at Westfield High School, and he murders 15 people and then is shot down by the police at his home because we know he had to be killed in the murder house for the plot of the story to work. Whereas Eric and Dylan actually committed suicide at the school outside the library after they had killed a bunch of the kids. But it did play out that way, where they went into the library, they shot at people hid under desks and tables and pleaded for their lives. There's even one point where there's theory behind this. One person was supposedly asked, "Do you believe in God?"
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure.
But I think that was debunked, and that never really happened, or it was worded differently to the girl that it happened to. Something about that was a little different.
Oh, wow.
But something similar.
I was in Columbine the day after that happened. Because the Star Wars celebration was there in Denver, and our hotel was in Columbine. And we had flown in, and the Columbine shooting had happened the night before, or the day before. And the day after, and the whole weekend we were there, we were in Columbine. And let me tell you, that whole community is shut down. They were just absolutely devastated. But I found it very interesting. It was a real interesting view on America at the time. Is you hear people talking in the grocery stores and talking to each other on the street. How did this happen? Why did this happen? You go to these little penny saver magazines. You guys might have them in your state. Well, I sure don't have them here. But you go to these little penny saver magazines and you look on the back of it, and there's some bitch in a bikini selling a gun, a big old automatic gun. And these people at Columbine saying, "Well, how did this happen?" I'm like, you're standing right by the place that sells the freaking guns.
Right. Right.
Pretty interesting. It was an interesting take on America.
Joseph, I don't want to mess this up. Mengele,
Mengele, I think.
Mengele was the Nazi doctor Dr. Arden wishes he could be in Asylum. Dr. Arden, James Cromwell's character, is the doctor you'd never want to get in a hospital. In the show, he performs cruel and unusual surgeries to the poor patients at Briarcliff. His real-life counterpart was equally as awful. Nicknamed the Angel of Death, he worked in the Nazi concentration camps and was obsessed with physical abnormalities. He would take blood and perform experiments on those who piqued his medical interest. He's also known to have kept body parts in general. And we also know that he's the one who did the experimentation with the ink in the eyes.
Yeah.
Which is why we got that on the asylum poster with the white nun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things he's most noted for. When you look up like his experiments and stuff, they talk about that the most. Right? I mean, how do you guys feel about Dr. Arden fitting in with that same?
I mean, he did. I've always had not issues, but questions with what Ryan was trying to prove with Dr. Arden, because it was so macabre in a setting you would think would have more of a oversight and overview of putting somebody in there. I say this guy was creating like Frankenstein monsters in the damn asylum that's run by the church, run by the diocese, and nobody ever questioned that. And it's like, where did they get this crazy fucker from to begin with? So
that's probably why they made the Monsignor like such a fucking asshole. Because if it was a regular Monsignor, like they would have been reported Arden.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't it because like Arden had dirt on him too? So he was supposedly.
like, I mean, they tried to answer it with all the the little excuses, but
I don't think
come back to the side that how did he get hired?
Why he allowed it? Now later he had dirt on him, but that doesn't explain why he initially let him do.
How did he get hired in the first place?
Right. Because he mentioned something about that. He's like, "Well, you hired me to do this and this." Well, okay.
Well,
why?
Like if they're plotting a staff, because they make it sound like that was an initial staff, decision or whatever. And if they're scheduling a whole staff or hiring a whole staff, you would think the whole diocese, the whole church would have been part of this, not just Timothy.
Right.
I thought it was a little bit of a stretch just to make the show more scary, more macabre.
Probably. Plus, there's probably stuff that he did that they don't know about experiment-wise, because it seems like he did quite a bit. So, like, just horrific.
He was creating monsters down there.
Wes Bentley's Edward Mordrake is a famous urban legend from Freak.
Yes.
The real Edward Mordrake, played by Wes Bentley, truly existed, though the legend surrounding his unusual malformation is debatable. According to the 19th century English-born urban legend, Mordrake had two faces, a normal face and a face coming out of the back of his head that whispered evil things. His second face allegedly forced his forward-facing face to commit heinous crimes. Mordrake killed himself at the age of 23, possibly after his second face drove him insane.
Wow.
How would you guys feel having a second face?
Well, if you can't see it.
You know.
It doesn't take a whole new meaning to mom saying I have eyes in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, back
literally,
they couldn't have gone in without it.
Danny Houston's Axeman is based on the Axeman of New Orleans from Coven. The Axeman portrayed by Danny Houston in Coven was a real-life serial killer who attacked at least 12 people within his year-long murder spree in the early 1900s. The Axeman of New Orleans was never caught, but we do know that he loved jazz music, just like his character did on AHS. And he had an affinity for writing letters. Though his motivation has never been proven, his crimes largely focused on Italian Americans, leading people to believe he was either racially motivated or tied to the mafia. Or maybe he was Italian American himself, or maybe he was like maybe he wasn't Italian American, maybe he was Italian who came here and he was full-blooded and maybe he didn't like people, maybe self-hating Italian American. Those type of people exist too.
Yep. Oh yeah. Self-hating gays, there's self-hating black people, there's self-hating Jewish people.
Right. People just be happy with who you are and what you do. You can't change it. Be happy.
You are.
Be
everybody
happy.
is special in their own little way.
Everybody is special. Everybody. You're damn straight.
Just by being unique makes you special.
That's true.
Yeah, but what are you doing? What are you doing?
Bloodyface got his taste for skin from Ed Gein in Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much any killer depicted in media that has a penchant for wearing the skin of their victims must give credit to the original skin taker, Ed Gein. Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs preferred to wear his victims in a woman's suit made to fit him. But HS, Asylum's big baddie, uses the face of a victim to hide his identity. Bloodyface, a.k.a. Dr. Threadson, played by Zachary Quinto, is a gruesome sight with his literal face mask, and it's all inspired from Gein's taste for skinning corpses and saving their skin for various uses. Now, I remember correctly, wasn't Ed Gein from Wisconsin or was it Illinois?
Wisconsin.
Either way, it was the Midwest. Most of the most prolific serial killers we have come from the Midwest area.
Yeah, Dahmer was Wisconsin.
It's because there's nothing out here.
Hmm? Yeah, it's because
there's nothing else to do, so they just kill people.
Come up here. Come on.
They get bored. I don't know.
Huh?
I like fun.
Nuka, come up here.
Miss Evers' son was a victim of the real-life chicken coop murders from Hotel. Miss Evers is an especially good maid. She can get blood out of anything, but her character is given poignant depth when the story of her deceased son is revealed in a flashback in season 5. It is revealed that Miss Evers' young son was abducted and murdered. The murder is an actual real-life case, the chicken coop murders. The murders gained major media attention in the late 20s. Gordon Stewart Northcott was a chicken farmer turned serial killer in Wineville, California. From 1926 to 1928, he abducted and murdered young boys with the help of his mother, Sarah Louise Northcott. That's messed up. And his nephew, Sanford Clark. At least 3 boys were killed at Northcott's hands, though there have been many more. All the bodies were found in Northcott's chicken coops. So it was a family affair.
Yep. That's why they based Texas Chainsaw Massacre off.
Right.
Your nails need to be cut.
The lovable Pepper was a real-life character, sideshow performer, and that was from Freak Show. And then Asylum. Pepper is one of the most lovable characters in both Freak Show and Asylum. She and her husband Salty were inspired by Schlitzie Sertrees, aka Schlitzie the Pinhead. Schlitzie suffered from microcephaly, which left him with his cognition of a 3-year-old child who could only speak in single-syllable words. Throughout his career, he was often billed as a female because he chose to wear dresses. Just like his character in AHS, Schlitzie was beloved by those around him. In 1932, he landed a role in the film Freaks and became somewhat of a household name, which we know Freak Show was very much based off of the movie Freaks.
Almost cookie cutter. It was
cut for cut, almost.
We should do a review of Freaks one night.
We could do that.
It'd be fun.
A review of what?
Freaks.
Freak.
The movie that Freak Show
was inspired Freak Show.
It was 1932. They hired real performers from the Freak Show to be in that film, just like Freak Show did. And the film was is incredibly disturbing. Really,
now, you know,
really
Freak
disturbing.
Show was all Jessica Lange's idea, too.
Yep. Because she loved that movie, Freaks.
Yeah. Richard Ramirez was a real character. We talked about that in Hotel. From 1984 to 1985, Ramirez robbed, raped, and killed a number of residents of San Francisco and Los Angeles. He lived at the Sunken Hotel. The scary part was that his victims were chosen at random and killed with no distinct method.
Because he was antisocial.
Lily Rabe's Eileen Wuornos was based on the real-life serial killer and prostitute from Hotel. It says Rabe's character had previously been played by Charlize Theron in the unsettling blockbuster Monster. In real life, Eileen Wuornos was a prostitute. She was eventually killed by lethal injection, but before her death, she murdered several men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. Okay. Lance Reddick's Papa Legba is a staple of voodoo culture from Coven and then revisited in Apocalypse. Papa Legba may not be real per se, but he's definitely a very important legend when it comes to the practice of voodoo. Though Papa Legba is undeniably a villain in AHS, in real life he represents both good and evil, which I think is why they gave him that gray look, the white and the black, the yin and the yang type of thing.
Evil in Coven. Thought he was just the walker of death.
He was the gatekeeper of death.
Exactly.
He was the gatekeeper to hell.
He wasn't really an asshole.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It wasn't good or evil. He was just the gatekeeper.
Yeah, and that's what it
at
says.
least they gave him a sense of humor.
That's true. Plus, Lance Reddick is such a great actor.
Yeah.
It says he's the message man between the living and the dead and is often depicted as an old man with a cane and straw hat. AHS ramped up his look to include a creepy top hat instead. But the cane is very much similar in everything else. AHS did get one thing right. Papa Legba's signature colors are black, white, and red, which is evident in his striking appearance. In addition to facilitating conversations with the dead, Papa Legba presents people with choices and leads them along different crossroads. In American Horror Story, these paths aren't really ones we'd want to cross. But to see the black, white, and red. And if you look up the significance of the colors black, white, and red, a lot of times it's seen as very much evil and demonic colors. When you have those three colors together, they represent negative things, demonic things. I don't necessarily always believe that. And I think that's because those are like three of my favorite colors in the world. And I don't think I have an evil bone in my body. But
I always thought that the black and the white was the yin and yang to represent the opposite.
Right. And I guess maybe once you throw the red in with it, though, and you have that trifecta, it then changes it. Maybe it's the representation of blood against the battle of good and evil. Maybe. Twisty the Clown was based on John Wayne Gacy in Freak Show and then revisited in Cult. Twisty the Clown's John Carroll Lynch, his tale of attempted suicide is gut-wrenching. We almost feel sorry for him after his life is ruined by accusations of child molestation. His character is deeply layered, but at the root of it all, he's inspired by a cold-blooded killer who warrants no sympathy at all. John Wayne Gacy is one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, and he used his alter ego, Pogo the Clown, to commit heinous crimes. In 1980, he was found guilty of murdering at least 33 young males, who he buried in a crawl space underneath his home. What's worse is that his actions were not just limited to murder. Nope. He raped and sexually assaulted the young boys that he killed. We also see John Wayne Gacy directly in AHS Hotel at the Devil's Night dinner party in a fun throwback to John Carroll Lynch's playing. He also plays Gacy in that. He plays Gacy in that episode. So I like that they brought the same actor because of the fact that that character that he was so famous for, they didn't typecast him just as Twisty. They brought him back because he was known. He was based off of John Wayne Gacy, so that then when they did the murderers in Hotel for Devil's Night, he was then John Wayne Gacy. So I like that they did that because then you saw him with the clown makeup on again and that evil smile. And it was very much Pogo the Clown makeup, if anybody wonders. It was very, very kind of accurate. Jimmy Darling was inspired by the Lobster Boy in Freak Show. A lot of Freak Show's freaks were based in reality. Throughout history, those suffering from rectodactyly, lobster claw syndrome, have been featured in Freak Shows, but Evan Peters' character was inspired by one in particular. Grady Franklin Stiles Jr. and his sideshow performing family all suffered from ectrodactyly. There we go. He was forced to become a freak show act, nicknamed the Lobster Boy, shortly after he was born, and he performed throughout the late 1930s and 1940s. Eventually, he became an alcoholic, and he murdered his future son-in-law. So a little to add to that, I know that he murdered his future son-in-law, but he actually wasn't jailed for it because of his deformity. I don't know if they took pity on him, they took sympathy, or they just thought he wouldn't be able to handle being in jail or whatever the situation was. But I know that he was never, he was never tried and convicted, or if he was convicted, he never served time. I know that for a fact. He never served time for the murder of his son-in-law. And it was proven that he did it. It's very known that he did it.
Yes. And he's very known that he was severe alcoholic.
Come in.
Beat his wife. There's a whole special about him.
Kit and Alma were inspired by Barney and Betty Hill in Asylum.
Yep.
Turn that down, please.
First people saw aliens.
According to American Horror Story producers, Kit and Alma Walker from Asylum were actually inspired by two very real people. Just like it depicted in the series, Barney and Betty Hill were a mixed-race couple. In 1961, the pair's alien abduction claims became highly publicized. Their story didn't just inspire AHS, they inspired the best-selling novel, The Interrupted Journey, and the TV movie, The UFO Incident. Now, I know they reported losing time, they were stopped in the road, and then they both were suddenly like back again. and like a lot of time had passed, and they had seen stuff in the sky prior to that.
But then,
so that's about,
didn't throughout the years, their stories just got more and more elaborate?
I'm not sure.
I think,
but I know they became like famous overnight, and they did lots and lots of interviews and things like that.
And I think the biggest misconception with them is that their stories continue to grow and continue to be more elaborate.
And it could very well be that, you figured nobody would believe you anyway. And then maybe once people were believing you, you're like, okay, I'll give you some more detail.
Maybe.
But
it's about shit crazy.
Right. Maybe they were abducted multiple times, and multiple things happened.
You never
Look
know.
at what happened to Kit. They kept coming back for him. So who knows?
Yeah, you never know. Until you're abducted, you won't know.
That's true. And even then, some people don't know when they are.
Right.
Lady Gaga's Wild Witch, Scathach, is a real life legend from Roanoke. Not the city of Roanoke, from this season 6 Roanoke.
Yeah.
Lady Gaga's creepy Roanoke character Scathach, Celtic for the shadowy one, may have never existed, but her legend runs deep. Scathach is a sexually charged female warrior and teacher in Irish mythology. She has magical strength and intense rage, and is particularly adept in underwater fighting and pole vaulting. In addition to training female warriors, she allegedly sexually rewards male warriors.
I'll be back in a minute, guys. Hey, I'll be back.
They gotta have Scathach come back.
She'll come back. Ryan's already said she's coming back in a season. We just all thought it was going to be Apocalypse. So, Lizzie Borden killed her parents very much like Grace did in Asylum. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Everybody knows that quote, right? That's like it's like a little quip, a little poem, a little quip about Lizzie Borden. Those who love horror lore will be well acquainted with this parental axe murderer. From 1892, in Asylum, Grace Lizzie Brocher, is that how you say Brocher? Has also killed her parents in such a fashion. But they don't give you much backstory on Lizzie Borden.
It shows like 2 hours. What? I know. It shows like 2 hours. Nuka, are you podcasting?
The murder cult in season 7 is based on the smiley face murder theory in Cult.
From who?
Creepy smiley face murderous clowns and cult emblazon. I can't say that word. On every crime scene is actually inspired by a real life series of murders which may not actually be murders at all. The smiley face murders are not recognized by the law as fact and are widely ruled to be accidental drownings. Still, many believe the deaths encompassed in this theory were homicides performed by young men across America by a group of killers. Nearly all of the deaths had a graffiti smiley face somewhere near the crime scene. I've actually watched a special on this. It's rather interesting. If you guys ever get a chance, look into the smiley face murders. And maybe we'll have to ask Mary about doing one of those on like True Crime Night or something.
Before we get to Cult.
Right. Because the smiley face murders are very interesting because it is, there's a lot of supposed drownings that carved on a tree or either carved on a tree or like spray painted on a tree was a smiley face. And then it just kept happening across the country at different instances where people would die or they would drown. And then that would be found somewhere around their body, but it would look slightly altered. There was always the smiley face, but they did look slightly altered. You could say, excuse me. And you already opened it. Don't you want to go downstairs? Their Paulson's, Bet and Dot Tatler were inspired by real conjoined twins in Freak Show. Conjoined twins have long been a staple in freak shows, but Bet and Dot were inspired by one of the most famous. Violet and Daisy Hilton, who were fused together at the pelvis, were born in England in 1908. It didn't take long for them to launch a booming but short-lived career after moving to San Francisco. The pair was the sub-documentary called Bound by Flesh, the story of Violet and Daisy Hilton, and they starred in the 1937 film Freaks. Throughout the 1920s, they performed in vaudeville shows alongside major talent like Charlie Chaplin and Bob Hope. Eventually, their success waned, and they ended up working at a grocery store to make ends meet. Because I know they lost their agent. Their agent just like basically ghosted them, disappeared on them and everything, and then they ended up working in a grocery store after that.
Yeah.
The Zodiac Killer maybe appears twice, Hotel and Cult. We know the Zodiac Killer was a real killer. He appeared in Devil's Night for the Dinner Party in Hotel. And then the Hooded Killer's identity is never directly revealed, keeping with the historical truth that the Zodiac Killer was never discovered. However, in Cult, the show makes its first stretch history by first exploring the story of Valerie Solanas, the woman who shot Andy Warhol, which is also true. It's the next one. And then making the very crazy stretch that she was the Zodiac Killer, or at least led a group of women in a cult-like way toward the multiple killings that would come to be called the Zodiac Killings.
Yeah.
Now we know that he wrote letters to the press, very cryptic messages, and he was never caught. They don't know who it is. He was never found.
Nope.
Valerie Solanas and Andy Warhol showcased the cult of celebrity in Cults. Evan Peters played Andy Warhol. Lena Dunham plays Valerie, his would-be assassin Valerie Solanas. Here the historical figures play out their own true. Solanas attempting to assassinate Warhol because she was mad. She was mad he lost the script she wrote, and generally being quite misogynistic toward her. The episode warps down history a bit later in the episode, but the two characters and their wacky tale are all too true. So she really did try to kill Andy Warhol. Kathy Bates, the Butcher, was based on the real Thomas M. White in Roanoke. There's not much known about the real life Thomas M. White named Thomasina White in AHS Roanoke. There are no public records of her beyond the 1566 marriage to Roanoke Governor John White. It's not even clear if Thomasin accompanied her husband to America, one of his Roanoke expeditions, or if she had a hand at the colony's mysterious disappearance. It's a safe bet, though, that she probably wasn't actually a butcher, knife-wielding psycho like the Butcher.
Yep.
Anne Frank was not a mental patient in real life. She wasn't all too real person, as we saw Anne Frank in Asylum. Most of us have read The Diary of Anne Frank in school, but nowhere did we hear about her descent into madness or her trip to the American Asylum. That's because it didn't happen, unless you're watching American Horror Story's second season. Anne Frank was a 15-year-old Jewish girl who painfully wrote about her terrifying experiences during the Holocaust. Frank is thought to have died in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp from typhus, but AHS makes a pretty compelling argument that she did in fact survive. could Anne Frank a mental pay or no?
Well, I mean that's
Could
not
Frank
true though, because it was that woman Charlotte, so it wasn't like they led us to
well, it
believe
says
that she was the real Anne
could Frank
Frank.
character, a mental patient named Charlotte who swears she's Anne Frank, really be the famed writer? It's
Oh,
certainly
God.
interesting to think about.
I hate this storyline. I still say this whole storyline was put in there just because Dr. Arden was a German doctor.
Oh, and that's the last one I have.
Okay. Thoughts? Retrospect? Do we have comments? Do we have a watcher?
Now, that covers cool. Now, what about Apocalypse?
What?
What about Apocalypse?
What about it? I don't think there was any.
Can
Well,
you guys-
because Apocalypse was, fan service, all the tie-ins. I don't think there was anything specific that they based a crime off of, except for the ones that they had already mentioned in the past from the seasons, like the murder house and stuff like that.
Right, maybe that's why they took us back.
Well, we know
brought the back down.
We know
back in and things like that.
We know that the cooperative is based off of what's going on in San Francisco right now.
Well, the Illuminati was mentioned in
Illuminati.
Yeah.
The Illuminati. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because they even mentioned that in Apocalypse, and he's like, "Well, we don't like to call ourselves that."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those kind of things, but they're not necessarily crime like we're talking about tonight. I don't think there was any crimes that was really committed in Apocalypse. It was more about just the Armageddon.
Some of them were real people, like Slitsy and Bettendorf.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
the trueness behind the horror, the truth behind the horror.
Yep. There you go.
That's about all I have, you guys. I'm sure there's probably a few that I missed. So actually, I would like it if anybody in the comments could go ahead and add whatever we missed so that we can go back and look at it. Maybe we can do a part 2, or maybe we can look back into this and do, something else, a little sidebar on this on another topic too.
Sure. What's our topic next week, guys? Let us do hotel.
Hotel next week?
Yes. Kenny?
Yeah, we could do hotel.
And then we'll take a break.
I mean, I kind of just
hotel.
Yeah, I was gonna say it because I want to finish Apocalypse before.
Yeah, I do too.
Season 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll do hotel just to go back to it, and then it'll be a good time because then we can go off on side tangents about all the different stuff that's happening in hotel and things like that, and because hotel is going to be a big thing to cover because of Apocalypse.
Right.
Hotel might even be a 2-parter. Okay, but I got a jet. See you guys.
All right.
Bye, people.
Bye.
Who are watching this in the future.
Yeah, bye, people, future watchers of America. Okay, bye.